Welcome back, kids. I know it's Paris-Roubaix weekend, but I wanted to take a look at this Croatia race Stage 1 sprint. A bit of a dodgy one between Bauhaus and the young star Olav Kooij on Jumbo-Visma. First stage, sprint stage, and actually we've got an interesting start list here. We've got 4 World Tour teams. We've got Jumbo-Visma and also Mick van Dijk on that team. He's been on the dev squad. Watch out for him. He's definitely a Flandrian for the future. We'll see him doing lead-outs in this race. Got Bahrain victorious, Israel Startup Nation, and Bike Exchange. But Bahrain, for this stage, sprint stage, they got Phil Bauhaus here. They were the team tasked with controlling things for the most part. You can see it when they started, they were seeing who's going into the break. They got a break they were comfortable with. And it was also Bike Exchange helping. They got Caden Groves, the young Australian sprinter here. He did well, and I think his best result this year, I know he won at Slovakia, was actually that 5th in Dauphiné Stage 1. But they were pacing. They've got Zeitz as well as Simon Yates. So for the climbing stages this weekend, we got Yates, Padun, and Landa here, presumably tuning up for the Italian Classics, but also Santiago Buitrago, who we'll see on the front a bit later. Other quick men are Aberasturi and Christopher Halverson for Uno X, and then of course there's Adria Mobile, Meridia, Carmen, I believe. They've got the most Croatian home riders. So 83k to go, 2 minutes 25, all in hand. It was going to be a sprint. We knew that for sure. And if you are missing out on some Paris-Roubaix coverage, there is time by the time this is uploaded for you to check out our men's preview. It's an absolute banger on the Lanterne Rouge cycling podcast, separate YouTube channel. I'm sure you'll enjoy. But in the break was Vil, Miholovic, Bogolovsky, Delka, and Franjek. And every time I see this Androni jersey, I'm like, how much are these sponsors paying? Like, honestly, they have. If you go on their website, Androni Giocotelli, they have like 50 sponsors, maybe even 80. Like, how much can they be paying for that space on that jersey? I mean, is it like $1,000, $2,000? Surely it can't be that much more than that. But once again, we saw this, I already mentioned the Dauphiné, we saw Buitrago, the like 60 kilo Colombian, who came 5th, I think, on Picon Blanco and then didn't get taken to the Vuelta, pacing the flat, and they were able to chase down the break today. It wasn't a problem. It was a problem in the Dauphiné. And if you saw on Twitter, if you follow me at Lanterne Rouge YT on Twitter, you saw I put out a thing about Justin Wolf. He's a Conti rider on Bike Aid, big German engine. This guy would cost probably the minimum for stages like this, put someone on the front, control the break easier than getting Buitrago to do it. The guy's a pure climber. Anyway, it's pretty surprising to me. Young talent. I think he's out of contract. I'm not sure where he's going to be going next year, but I think he should stay in the World Tour. But Bugalkovsky went clear on his own from the breakaway, maybe taking the combativity. And then it was actually later in the stage that there was an Euskaltel double break, Bodnar Sagan style, but it's actually Aparin and Luis Angel Mate, the veteran. I'm not sure if you remember, you saw in the Vuelta, those Orbea bikes, the paint job they have specifically for the Vuelta, they were absolutely cracked. Didn't get much attention, but I think they were one of the best paint jobs of the year, I think. But this move from them was going nowhere, and it's a shame also not see Uno X at Paris-Roubaix this weekend. I mean, they would have been top 5 strongest team. They're riding for Christopher Halverson here, though, in the sprint, who you see getting led out on the left-hand side. It's Mick van Dijk on the right-hand side. 3-year deal at Jumbo-Visma World Tour, I think, starting from next year. Leading out Olav Kooij, the 19-year-old Dutch superstar sprinter. We have a technical finish. Phil Bauhaus is on Olav Kooij's wheel, and this is all about getting into the position before the right-hand bend in the last 75 meters, which makes it tricky for these riders. Also like a smooth road surface here, and Kooij gets on the right-hand side of Bauhaus' shoulder. It then cuts angle, and we see Kooij mad at the end. We're like, what happened here? Bauhaus wins on the line by over a bike length on Kooij, but this video what I want to talk about is Bauhaus' move against Kooij, his lack of relegation, which to me seems completely obvious. Halverson coming 3rd on the line, and why the non-relegation here means that dangerous crashes from deviations will keep happening in the future. We see here Bauhaus on the left-hand side. Remember, you have to stay in your lane, not line. I've gone over the rules 1,000 times. Stay in your lane. And so this shouldn't be too hard to understand, because a lot of people drive a car. When there's a lane around a bend, you can't go in the other lane. You have to follow your lane around. So Bauhaus has to follow his lane, leaving enough space for Kooij around this right-hand bend, but he starts to squeeze him. And it's not as bad as the Groenewegen one, but he's squeezing him to the barriers. It's pretty dangerous. Kooij at this point, is endangered because if I replay and go back, he's sprinting here and he has to feather the brakes or stop pedaling, take evasive action so he doesn't get put into those barriers. I would say that's getting endangered. He got squeezed, so Bauhaus has deviated from his lane, endangered another rider. Textbook relegation, didn't get relegated, and this is how the cycle continues. Olav Kooij, he's 19 years old, his first sort of sprint season for at World Tour level against World Tour guys. This happens to him. The guy doesn't get relegated. He's like, oh, so this is the status quo. We're allowed to do this stuff. He's now probably got like a 12-year, 15-year career ahead of him where he thinks that's okay, or he doesn't think it's okay, but he knows the incentives support deviating and you probably won't get relegated. And I mentioned this in the context of Bauhaus did the same thing, a slow squeeze to Bouhanni actually in the Saudi Tour last year, didn't get relegated. And then Bouhanni gets relegated for his move against Stewart, where questionable if he'd even launched his sprint. But anyway, if you think this is, oh, you're being too soft, the UCI would never do this, the next day, or maybe the same day, we've got a sprint in Giro de Sicilia, stage 2, Milano on the front, Fiorelli in his wheel, questionable if he's even launched his sprint at this point, and Fiorelli, again around a right-hand bend, coming out of the wheel of Milano, moves to the left, now maybe a little bit more sharply, but again, moves to the left, coming out of the wheel, and chops Moschetti a little bit, endangers him. You see Moschetti having to brake, and Fiorelli moves to the other side of the road and gets relegated. I think fair enough. Ackermann got relegated for the same thing a few times. It's pretty dangerous. He maybe lost a bit of control around the bend. He didn't need to come that far around Milano. But to me, it's not even as bad as what Bauhaus did, and the consequences aren't as bad. I just wanted to make this video to just add another into the archive of UCI sprint deviation relegation inconsistency. I don't see how the Bauhaus move is okay, but the Rui Costa move against Krohn in Tour de Suisse wasn't okay. Luckily for Kooij, he's already won 2 stages at Croatia race. I think he won stage 2 and then stage 4 the next day. He's a really talented guy, only 19 years old, and you remember he came 3rd at Worlds Under 23 behind Gourmay. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Can't wait to see Paris-Roubaix Femme. About to watch that in an hour or so. And then the men's race tomorrow. Make sure you check out the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for the recaps of that, as well as I will have highlight videos for both races on this channel, the women's one dropping this evening. So make sure you look out for that. But until then, ciao.